Very good evening to you all. I hope you've had a fabulous Sunday and I hope you're ready for part 3 of our story, the story of Snow White. So my name is Helen and last night we left the story as Snow White was in the little cottage in the woods. And the 7 little men who lived in the house had gone off to work in the mine where they mined for gold. And Snow White was about to get on with her daily chores of cleaning and cooking when she heard a knock at the door. Which was a bit of a cliffhanger yesterday, wasn't it? So we're going to find out who it was at the door and what happens next. So, in order to find out what happens next, we're going to whiz our way over to the castle. Now, in the castle, the stepmother, the wicked queen, she was in the castle with her magic mirror. And she thought the huntsman had got rid of Snow White forever in the woods. So she looked in her magic mirror. And can we remember what she says to the magic mirror? She says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the queen was expecting the mirror to reply that she was the fairest of them all, especially now Snow White was gone, far, far away from the kingdom, never to return again. But oh dear, the mirror said, "You are fair, that is true, but Snow White still lives in a cottage in the woods, tucked away deep, deep, deep down by the river." And the evil stepmother, she was furious. She wanted to be the fairest of them all, and she wanted to be queen, the most beautiful queen that there ever was. And in her castle, she came up with a horrible plan. She made a potion, an awful poison, and she put in all of the nasty things into this poison. She got a big cauldron and she mixed it up, and she put in lots of nasty things, and she took an apple, ooh, a lovely rosy red apple, and she dipped it into the poison. Oh, I wonder what she was going to do with that. And then she used some of the poison to cast a spell over herself so that she no longer looked like the queen, but that she looked like a little old lady. And knowing where Snow White now was, having heard the mirror, she made her way into the woods. And she walked in disguise as the little old lady all the way through all of the trees, past the river, when she came to a clearing with a house. And she saw the smoke coming up from the chimney. And so she knew that in that house was Snow White. And so she knocked at the door. Oh no! So that was who was at the door. Oh dear, so that was who was at the door. It was the stepmother, disguised as an old woman, with a poisonous apple. Oh, I really hope that Snow White doesn't answer the door. Do we think she will? Oh, so Snow White, she heard the door knocking, and she said, "Hello, excuse me, who's at the door?" And the stepmother said, "Oh, it's just me, dear. Please will you let me in? I'm just a little old lady selling delicious, juicy apples." And Snow White thought for a moment to herself, "Oh, but the 7 men told me not to answer the door to anyone. They told me that I should keep the door locked. But it's just a little lady and she's selling delicious apples. Supposing I just let her come to the window and buy one." And so she said, "You can't come in here, but I will, and I can reach out and take one of your apples and pass the money to you." And the old lady said, "Oh, very well, dear." and she came round to the window. And Snow White opened the window, and she saw the lady there in a little cloak, and she saw the most delicious looking apple. It was bright red, and it was particularly shiny. "Oh, wow," Snow White said. "That does look like a delicious apple." "It is the most delicious apple you will ever have," the old lady said, as she passed it towards Snow White. And Snow White took the apple. "Oh, I don't suppose I could just have one bite," she said, as the apple moved towards her mouth. "Just one bite." And she took a bite. And it was delicious. She started to chew the apple. But then she felt her throat close up. Oh, oh, and she fainted down on the ground. At that moment, the old lady peeled back her cloak and transformed into the evil queen. "Ha ha ha ha," she said, "and now Snow White is gone forevermore." And off she went, back through the forest and back to the castle. Oh no, poor Snow White lying there on the floor. What a horrible poisonous apple that was, and a very nasty plan. But don't worry, coming back from their day's work in the mine were the 7 little men. And we know that they're coming because they always whistle on their way home from work. And as they came down through the woods and past the clearing, they saw the house. But there wasn't any smoke rising up from the chimney. And that alarmed them. So they started to run. "Oh, can we run just like them at home? Run as fast as we can. Run, 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 run." And they all ran as fast as they could. And they opened the door. And they saw Snow White lying there. And they saw the apple on the floor next to her. "Oh no," they said. "This must be the wicked stepmother's plan. Oh, the evil queen. What are we going to do?" And they all sat around Snow White, and they lifted her up, and they popped her onto a bed. And around the bed they put roses and flowers. "Oh, we think she's still alive," they said. "We think she might just be sleeping, perhaps." And just at that moment, a prince was riding by on a horse. And this prince was galloping along on his horse when he heard the cries from within the house. So he stopped. And the door was open, so he just gave it a little knock. "Excuse me," he said. "Is everything okay?" "Oh," all of the men said. "No, poor Snow White, the princess. She was collapsed when we got home from work, and there was an apple next to her." And the prince came close to Snow White and looked at her lying there, surrounded in the flowers. Oh, and he tried to pick her up. He popped his hands underneath her and lifted. And in that moment, he heard that she was choking. And a piece of apple fell out of her mouth. And she was breathing. Snow White was alive. Oh dear. Thank you so much for saving me. I ate an apple and I think it was poisonous," she said. And she looked at the prince and he looked at her. And it was love at first sight. And Snow White explained everything that had happened to the prince. And the 7 little men and the prince were not happy with the queen. And so, together, the prince, Snow White, and the 7 men all walked towards the castle. But by that stage, it was too late. The stepmother had heard that Snow White was alive, and she had fled, far, far away from the kingdom. The castle was empty and was left to Snow White and the prince. And they lived in there together. And they lived happily ever after. and they sometimes visited their friends in the forest. But all of them were safe from the evil queen, and they knew that she would never come back. The end. Ah, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining in at home with the story. What a fantastic tale. Oh, and it's been brilliant to have all 3 parts from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's the final part this evening. I hope you have enjoyed it. And Vicky and I have very much enjoyed telling these stories. And I think next weekend we are going to do another epic tale in 3 parts. And we need your help to vote on which story you would like us to tell. So we've still got Cinderella. Might be Cinderella that we tell next week. Or perhaps The Little Mermaid. That might be another one. We've still got stories left such as Beauty and the Beast or Thumbelina. So we'll pop a poll up on our page, and please do vote for which story you'd like us to tell. And then next week, we will tell that tale. But that is it from me this evening. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I hope you're all tucked up in bed. And we'll see you tomorrow night, and Vicky will be back with another shorter story on Monday evening. Bank holiday Monday. Good night, everybody.